Well, I think they'll be able to hear that. Oh. I feel simultaneously relaxed and very excited.
The goal of one's existence.
It is. I thought it was actually to create a currency that could be used by both dogs and cats.
For only dogs and cats to use it.
For only dogs and cats.
Only dogs and cats to use.
Screwing up my my pop culture references. If all has gone well, we're broadcasting to the YouTubes right now, and there are untold billions and billions that could be watching us at this very moment, including loyal Cracking the Code viewers and subscribers who are logged in through our platform right now and asking questions that we will at some point probably read and potentially answer. So for everybody tuning in on the YouTube, so what are we doing here? Well, we have the incredible Andy Wood here with us. And we're basically hanging out, and we're going to talk about electric guitar technique because Andy does too many things, actually, for one interview. As we've tried to interview him on two separate occasions, and each time there were multiple instruments involved, and each time we went over 2 hours, and we had a lunch break, and there were dogs.
Musical schizophrenia ensued.
It was.
It's my first time going live on a proper webisode, web show, whatever it may be. I've occasionally went live on Facebook just for the followers that I have there. So this is actually pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, what is this crazy topsy-turvy world that we live in now?
It's awesome. Man, if I was like 17 years old and could tune in to somebody that I like to play, it's
right. Tune into an REH videotape, but live.
Yeah, I mean.
So you actually overlap with the era of difficult to obtain media and knowledge.
I'm a cusp child. Yeah, that's what I like to refer to it as. I'm a cusp child. I remember the days with no internet and Oregon Trail, and then I remember the days where like you downloaded a picture and it would just be like, and now of course you can get online and play various video games instantly and do webisodes like this. It's crazy.
And do you feel like you would be better sooner as a guitar player now had you grown up now? Because like personally, I'm not old man yells at cloud, or I try not to be. In terms of like, oh, everything was, kids these days are too easy. No, it was too hard back then. It's kind of how it is for me, or that's how I see it.
If that's an honest question, I have a very unique answer. I think I don't know if it would be better. I don't know if it'd be worse. I think it would definitely be different. I would think at this point in time, if you're learning to play for the first time, let's say you're not a guy who played as a child and then gave it up and then get back into it. Let's say you're a first-timer, rookie season, if you will. You have so much information that it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to worry about what is getting views and what's getting clicks and it's easy to worry about what the perception is of cool. Whereas like in the non-digital age of learning guitar, you were just there in your bedroom with what you thought was cool. and you were trying to learn that. Now on the flip side,
Posters of dudes.
yeah. It's like it's crazy that like for as many pros that I can have for one side of it, there's just as many cons, and vice versa. I mean, I definitely think guys in my demographic would have the most unique and perspectives.
Because of the cusp. You crossed over.
Yeah, I crossed over.
Are you a late millennial? Is that, what do we call you?
I don't know. Am I
like
Generation X or Y? I'm an 80s. I was born in the 80s, so
Yeah.
like, I have a really awesome 82 to 88 era G.I. Joe collection. It's pretty sweet.
I think 81 is, it could very well be the tail end of Gen X, which is...
I don't know what any of those things. When it started turning into Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, I was like,
Right.
what is this? And now there's millennials.
I think the better way is by console. So I'm a
By console?
2600/800/64.
Okay,
so
I'm
Commodore 64, not N64.
I'm an NES
Yeah.
and Super Nintendo Genesis. That was my
There you go.
offshoot.
Yep.
I will say that arcades were better then.
Well,
So
physical
gaming
place.
this way is awesome. I love gaming, but like gaming this way was way cooler. You put your quarter on the side of the Mortal Kombat machine and whatever, and you had to earn your keep.
Do we get that right about the Mortal Kombat?
It was awesome. Those graphics were so cool. I watched that for the first time with my my cousin, and I texted to him. I was like, "Dude, you got to see this." He goes, "Oh my God, did you do those graphics?" I was like, "Of course not, Brian."
But so here's where the console generation comes in. Adam plays the game and screen caps the footage, and I'm like, oh, which one is the one that won? Who's playing Scorpion? And that's when I revealed my lack of knowledge of Mortal Kombat.
And that's when it was, yeah.
Because just for those who are also Gen Xers, Scorpion's the bad guy. He can't win. So you can't play Scorpion, right?
The great thing about Mortal Kombat is they're all the bad guy.
They're all
It's really, other than Liu Kang, nobody's. And I think he even ended up being bad at one point in the series.
We had, there are all these YouTube videos of essentially just downloads of all the sounds. And some of them are clearly just trolling. They're just dudes yelling stuff that maybe didn't even make it into the game, or perhaps if you did some very obscure combination of moves.
There was a lot of that in Mortal Kombat 2. That was the first time a lot of the guy would pop up on the side of the screen and yell "Toasty" and all these kinds of things. It's like they really got into that, and that's when they'd taken the secret character and the secret fighter a step farther with like, in the first one it was Reptile, and then the second one that's when they had Jade and Smoke and Noob Sabat.
But you could play all these characters, or am I getting
You had
it
to
wrong?
fight them. You had to do a special series of things to fight the characters. So like, I remember Reptile, you had to go double flawless on the pit stage and get a fatality. And that's how you got to fight him. So they took that to the next level in Mortal Kombat 2, where there was like the living forest, and then smoke would pop out on the side. You had to do an uppercut when the guy yelled "Toasty." There was like a lot of things that had to happen, so to do that. So that's how I learned to play guitar. How about you?
I think we just struggled. It was like we had nothing. Feel like I had nothing but a box of rocks to play with, essentially. Like, here, kid, take this, Mel Bay book. Actually, you know what? I take that back. What we did have, and I feel like we're
stuff.
What?
You would have been in the REH era, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
but we were in the Metal Method era. Do you remember Metal Method at all? So this is like the lineage of guitar instructional, purveyors, and I definitely. It's a weird thing to feel connected to, because now we actually this is what we do, right? In a manner of speaking. And actually know Doug Marks. I've spoken to him on email. Doug is a guy who's sort of an instructional pioneer of sorts. See, if you picked up a guitar magazine in the 80s, in the back it was Metal Method. And there were like 8 tapes, they were cassettes that came in the mail, and then later on they were VHS, and later on they were DVD. And Michelangelo Badio in the early 90s filmed Speed Kills, which was he had 2 kind of big instructional videos, and that was one of them, and that was a Metal Method production, which he did with Doug. But like basically...
And it didn't kill.
No, it didn't. It didn't kill. He's actually he's
still here.
He's quite functional even all these years later.
With all the speed,
with all the speed, the Speed Force is strong in him, because Speed Force. So, but anyway, yeah. So we did have stuff. We did, and I feel like we say we stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us for sure. And if it wasn't these people figuring out, hey, well, there's a format here, we can teach something. And we can teach it in a way like there was no one in my town that you could really go to get this information.
Same. I grew up in the middle of the woods.
Right, which was
North
where?
Carolina.
Knoxville? Or?
Marion, North Carolina, until I was like 15 or 16, and then that's when I moved.
To Knoxville?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you've been there?
That's what I call as home, because I've been there the majority of my existence.
Right. So the initial exposure, obviously we dramatized this in animated fashion in that feature, but it was mandolin was the first instrument, or was it
Yeah,
violin?
I didn't play electric guitar until I was 17 or 18, like right around that time. And it was mandolin before that, a lot of fiddle tunes, and you know, a lot of bluegrass contests and conventions and things like that. So it was a Brent Mason on the Mark O'Connor album, The New Nashville Cats. That's I heard him play, and I was like, okay, I got to do this.
That was the gateway drug for guitar.
Yeah.
But obviously, in that world, mandolin is big. Acoustic guitar, is that sort of the biggest?
Oh, the hero
brass-
instrument,
the hero instrument.
The hero instrument's the fiddle and the banjo.
Really?
Those are the two big instruments.
So I think of Tony Rice or Doc Watson as like giant stars of bluegrass, but
They
they're
are.
not.
I mean, but there were fewer guitar guys than there were like fiddle guys. There was like Bobby Hicks and Kenny Baker, and you know, it's just like there was just tons of guys that were featured on fiddle.
Right.
And mandolin wasn't really. Ironically, the father of bluegrass is Bill Monroe, and he was a mandolin player, but there was Jess McReynolds and Bill, and that was kind of it. And then all of a sudden, in the 70s with Sam Bush, that's when he made it like, oh, that's the cool guy. So it's like, that's when Bela Fleck and Sam and Jerry Douglas took some of the auxiliary instruments that weren't like the feature instruments. The reason I say fiddle and banjo is because the feature tunes were Foggy Mountain Breakdown, which was a banjo tune. Rocky Top, like Orange Blossom Special, which is a fiddle tune. You know, it's like those were the feature instruments.
Right.
So when they would do instrumentals, they would always pick one of those. So Newgrass Revival happened in the 70s. That's when that magic moment happened, and the Avengers assembled between Tony Rice and Mark O'Connor and Sam Bush and Bela Fleck. And that was like my biblical roadmap of music.
Okay. So before that, you had like Earl Scruggs or somebody.
Yeah, I mean, my granddad was always playing Bill Monroe records, and that's the tunes we would play. And then even mixed into that, there would be like old time tunes. I don't know what else to call them, but like old Joe Clark. That's not really a bluegrass tune. That's just like an old time tune.
And you know, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't really know the origin. Like you can go far enough back where if it's not a Bill Monroe record, then I don't even know what it was before that.
Yeah, so it comes from the settlers that came over from England and Scotland and stuff like that. That's why fiddle was so prominent, like tunes like Irish Washerwoman and things like this. So when they got in, started settling in America, it was culture clash for a lot of these people and their instruments. And that's when tunes like Old Joe Clark and Sally Gooden and things like that started developing. Right. And then when Bill Monroe took that sound, because his uncle actually was Uncle Pen, like the song Uncle Pen.
Uncle Pen. I think I
maybe we could shoot a link.
I've gone down this rabbit hole.
A few different times. Anyways,
get a little.
So
bit
his
better
uncle
at it.
was like the local star and played the fiddle, and Bill came from a big family, and he got the mandolin because he was the last one to get to choose.
Right, and that wasn't the cool instrument.
That wasn't the cool instrument.
Right, that I remember.
So he took that and the sound of the blues and the old time music and made bluegrass. It's really funny to think about like genres, because you can't really trace metal, you can't really trace jazz, and you can't trace old time music, you can't trace country, but you can trace bluegrass. Like what is definitively bluegrass came from Bill Monroe.
Right, and so
at least in my opinion.
Sure, and he certainly, what's the politic way of saying this that is defensible, right? He's certainly if you had to pick a nearest ancestor that sort of modernized the thing that we came to know as bluegrass, you would have to point to him.
Well, there wasn't bluegrass before him, really. It was old time music, and it was just a different genre. It was very, very different. So
when you listen to
it would be like Charlie Parker and that school of guys, bebop versus jazz standards, and the Benny Goodman stuff. It's like you can put a needle at the bebop moment, and same way with the bluegrass thing. It's like, oh, okay, that's
sure.
Bill.
And now, the form of a lot of these things, like you point out, like an Old Joe Clark or the Irish Washerwoman, you listen to Celtic music, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I get that.
Yeah, because you have a lot of these lines that are like, that's where a lot of the stuff kind of offshoots from when you hear the fiddles playing more modern tunes like the Jerusalem Ridge. Those kind of little inflections.
And that sort of rolling, repetitive nature of it, almost like a raga, but for Celtic people.
Yeah, it's like you can really start, seeing all the connective tissue of it when you just take key songs and then start placing them together.
So did you get stuck on the less cool instrument because they had already
No,
given the
no, no.
guitar to
I
someone
actually
else in the
started
family?
on fiddle. I didn't like it as a kid. I played fiddle for like a year and a half maybe, and I didn't really like it. And the mandolin was cool because to a 5-year-old, it looked like the guitar that I could play.
Okay. But now it's interesting that the structure of the instrument and the mandolin are very compatible. Obviously, the tuning is essentially the same.
Oh, to fiddle, mandolin
yeah,
to
right,
fiddle.
exactly,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So it's a natural transition from one to the other.
It just became learning the thing that you teach with your courses. It just became like how to figure out how to pick things.
Right,
you
right.
know.
So because the bowing is different. And now the other thing which we can talk about is just how you navigate, because I have some insight into what violinists do, especially classically trained violinists, and how they sort of map the board with positions and positional-based things, which it's not really a thing that you would do if you grew up playing improvisational music, per se, because of the need to play through changes and know what's coming and that kind
and you also find your own road maps and things. When I first started playing electric guitar, I really liked playing farther up on the neck. I liked playing in the, because it felt like the mandolin. I was like, okay, these frets aren't so far
yeah.
apart. I got down here and I was like, wow, that's so far. How do you do it? Now let's just stay up here. You know?
Yeah, like you look at a guy like Mike Marshall or something, how does that dude play a mandolin? Because he's a big guy and his hands are giant. And we have people all the time complain about scale length being too big on a guitar. Well, you can have the opposite problem possibly.
Because it's something that my granddad never gave me. And I mean, we didn't have money growing up, so it was like, my granddad had the instruments he had, and that's what we played. They were full-size mandolins and full-size guitars. I think the smallest guitar he had was something like a Gibson's comparable to like a Martin 000 or something. It was something in that family. So we had that and a Silvertone and a couple of fiddles, and like nothing was shrunken down for us. Like we just played what was there. So when I think about scale length, I see a lot of, this is something I hear a lot about, and I heard a lot about it after I'd played for some length of time, where guys are like, oh, I can't play that, my hands are too big. Oh, I can't do this because I can't stretch that far. Oh, I can't. It's like, there's so much of this, and I don't necessarily think that I can believe it, because I've seen too many physical anomalies of people that don't look like they can do what they can do.
The hand size thing, I think, is overblown for sure. It's definitely more of a paranoia. I won't deny that there are challenges, and for sure,
but there's no bigger challenge than the nature of the instrument in and of itself.
Exactly.
Right? Like
This is the minimum bar, and then all the other ones. It's kind of like when you look at the graph of like the time of the Earth has been around this long, and this is people.
Yeah.
And they're all just this tiny little.
I mean, and all of the things like the Django Reinhardts and all these people that had hand malfunctions.
That's true also,
it's like, boy, if they can reinvent the guitar and leave a mark like that.
Two frets, exactly.
It's like, well,
2 frets in a bar, or maybe
2 fingers in it. Yeah,
two fingers in a bar.
And he had some kind of giblets left over. Is that the correct medical term?
I think that's the correct medical term.
I would think so.
Men who live with nurse practitioners.
Yeah, you just kind of put your I don't know. But it was like, so for me, it was just like getting used to this, and my mom had got me a blue Telecaster when in the 90s, and I was 12, and I was so obsessed with Sam Bush and Bela Fleck, it stayed under the bed.
Right. So now, just to roll back a bit, the fiddle, you had like a very brief flirtation with that really early, and then it was mandolin from that point on. And by the time the amazing home videos from your cousin's channel, which we stole and incorporated into that,
I don't know how you found those. I've never found those.
Someone posted that on our forum, and of course, I love this stuff because to me, that's like archaeology. All of a sudden, I'm looking at you doing a thing, and I've spent an inordinate amount of time looking close up at your body.
Did it look super wrong,
different.
or was like
not wrong, but it looked different.
Yeah,
it did. But
it's before I had it figured out. When I watched the video, I was like, oh man, that's so. I remember not having it figured out at that point.
So for what we're talking about here, for those who are watching, is
I don't know if I still have it figured out yet.
Andy's cousin Brian Arrowwood, with whom he plays frequently, even still at the Live at the Bijou concert was with Brian.
Yeah.
Brian has his own YouTube channel, and he's got these awesome home movies on it of Brian and Andy and Grandpa Grampsy, playing bluegrass standards. I guess you had a name for the band at the time. Like
we were the Mountain Musicians.
Yes.
I don't know how.
You were the Rocky Mountain Oysters.
Yeah, I was like, how? Like, is that a good name? I don't know. I'm 11.
You're 11, right? It's fine. I wasn't even in a club or a band of anything of cool factor of that level. So, But what's amazing is we talk a lot about players and how they might have played when they were really young. But for the most part, we don't have any kind of record of what that is. I barely have any record of what I sounded like as a teenager. There's a few things, and there are cassettes. There's one video thing where there was no sound, and I can sort of imagine.
But there's becoming more and more of that. Like I mean, like guys like some of my friends like Jack Gardner and stuff like that. It's like, I remember when I met him, he was 17, and there's videos of him at 17, and now he's 24.
Is he not the McLovins guy, is it? No, or am I making
No. That's another British guy, McRocklin.
So who's Jack Gardner?
Jack Gardner is a friend of mine. So I'm going to just brief history here. This is a fun story, and it ties into what we're talking about with the archaeology and the what would you like, time dating, you know, stamping things. So I came up in what I call the graduating class of Petrucci Forum. We all met. So I met Martin and Tom and Rick and Andy James and all those cats at the same time. We were all in our early 20s-ish. And the internet had got to a point where you could post on a forum and it not go, you know, it was like, so we were all exchanging, you know, ideas and videos and whatnot. And Jack was exponentially younger than us. He was 15 or 16 at the time. And I remember the first time I met him was at a NAMM, and it was shortly after that first year. And there was videos of him then, and like now you see how far he's come. He toured last year with Stu Ham, and it's like you were just talking about like the archaeology thing, like being a cusp child. There's not a lot of people in my graduating class. Like there's not videos of Tom Quell playing before he's already developed his, you know, level of technique. Martin same way, but like there is of me just because Brian's dad, I think it was Brian's dad, or I don't want to misquote that. Somebody. Maybe one of Grampsy's friends videotaped it with one of these, like, you know.
Yes. Well, that's funny.
Whatever this is.
We got the thing, and we were like, how do we animate this to make it look like it came from the time period? And we looked up cameras, and we didn't know which one it might have been. We knew it was going to be big and ugly, but we just didn't know. And then Adam came up with the idea of, just do the overlays, like, you know, the record button, you know, the light blinking and all that stuff. And then we have some sound effects. I actually recorded, because I have an actual VCR so I can play the REH tapes, and I recorded Foley sounds of all the different noises it makes when you hit the buttons. And they're like, and little like kind of like farm animal noises that it belches out at you. And so we just overdubbed the sounds over the video and put some little wavy, you know, the bad TV static effects and stuff. And but to actually have video of your playing at that time, it just wasn't like rolling out of bed and hitting, you know, live stream on the Facebook app. Like you had to try.
Or even just looking at like what I posted. I think one of the videos is on Guitar Player magazines. Is back when I was in Down From Up. I was 25 or something, and I was like, oh boy, my playing's just not where I wanted it to be. But it's like, it's just so easy. It's right there to Google search. So if somebody who's not familiar with me, they'd see that and be like, oh, that's what he sounds like. I'm like, dude, that's like 10 years ago, you know?
Yeah, I mean, thank God there was no social media.
It's crazy,
to capture all the idiocy that I may have
it captures everything.
Been at the time. Because I know that I would have been I know I was an idiot kid, and I was now allowed to be an idiot kid and have that recede into the midst of.
And sometimes the idiot thing is, for me, it's always faulted into trying to be really helpful. Like, I specifically remember that Guitar Player thing. I don't know what they had that was like a practice amp, and it sounded just like a sack full of buzzsaws.
Oh, the...
Whatever it was. They had a million things there.
The Schultz thing, the Rockman?
No, it wasn't that. I just had to play through whatever they shot. It was the Bet You Can't Play This thing. And I was like, boy, this is not my tone at all. But because I was being asked to be on guitar, I was like, oh, wow, this is so cool. I'm getting to do the Bet You Can't Play This thing. And I was at the studio and stuff. I just wish I would have been like, hey, man, can I take 5 minutes to get my tone? And then you don't learn that until you've done those things a lot. And I think what you're saying is like, you know, obviously it documents all your bad decisions, but it documents you growing too, and like learning how to be like, you know, just give me 10 minutes to see if I can get this thing to be a better tone.
That's true, right. So for me, like, I like the old footage because you get to see how, maybe you can kind of catch that spark of where the thing came from, right? So I'm looking at this old footage of you, and I'm noticing aspects of your form that persist even today in different ways. But like you do, here's some nerdery for you. I call, the wrist goes left to right, right? And it basically tracks left to right according to these two bones on the arm. This is the radius bone, that's the ulna. So if you turn your arm like this, that's those two bones sort of, actually it's the
door
radius,
handle motion.
Yeah, the door handle motion. Yeah. That's actually this bone being stationary and this one rotating around it. Yeah. So sometimes you'll notice, and I didn't even really know this about myself until I started filming me in more detail, that when you set up on the guitar, some people have sort of a default orientation, either more this way or more this way. And that can, it can reflect choices that you make about your arm position and where you contact. Right.
I was just instantly like, which one am I?
So that probably feels, if you just sort of freeze and don't think about it, that probably feels pretty natural to you to be right there, right? And it feels sort of neutral, except that if you look at it, you'll see that it's more like this.
Yeah.
So you're doing what I call the ulnar offset, which is when your wrist is kicked a little bit in this direction.
Yeah.
And the picking motion actually then takes place mostly in this area down here, as opposed to in this area up here.
Yeah, sure.
And you'll see players, like if you look at Molly Tuttle, for example, a great bluegrass player that we've interviewed, her, David Greer also, they have the radial offset.
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
So their picking motion takes place mostly in this quadrant. So you're an ulnar guy down here, and that tendency is clear as day on the Brian footage. If you look at it, you'll see your hand bent way down like this. And actually, another fun fact is that the wrist's range of motion is greater in this direction. So it's not like if you go as far as you can go this way, you get to about here and it hurts a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I remember dealing with this as a kid and trying to decide which one it was. And it was, and the only reason I remember that, it's not something like I was doing it one day. I just kept going back and forth for months, several months over a summer. And it came to a point where I could do the like easier and more relaxed.
The rolly
if
things.
it was down. Yeah, the rolly things were better down. And on mandolin, you have less of that 3-string thing. You have more of the 2-string thing where it's sorry. Like, so I wanted that to feel right. And I noticed when I was doing it like this, felt like the mandolin had to be absurdly high.
Well, yeah.
And to make it feel comfy.
There's a really amazing old-timey, like in the 20s, mandolin player. There's a clip I saw on YouTube, and I forget what his name is. It was Salvatore or something. He played essentially upside down. The mando was up here, and he approaches strings from underneath, like this.
Was it a lute or was it a mandolin?
No, it was an actual mandolin, and he was a star in the 20s. He was like a, Rudolph Valentino type star, like silent movies, or like a soundtrack synced. I think it was sync sound actually, because he was playing, it was unreal stuff, but essentially playing upside down, approaching the strings from below, and I forget how he was holding the thing, but it was a very unusual form. And obviously he's long gone, this guy, but that's an example of a thing we'll never know the answer to unless there are players now that actually play that way that we could find. But so these things, like you experiment at some very young age, and most of it is lost to history, but in this case we have a little window. A moment, and you're doing it there, and clearly that period of trial and error, whatever it was either probably still happening, I guess, at that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I didn't feel like I had a good grip on the picking thing until maybe junior high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but
it was weird. Is like I feel like I worked and worked and worked for several years, and when it clicked, it was like, oh wow, that's the moment that I could ride the bike, and I was like just telling my body to remember what that felt like.
Yeah.
So it's not that I had that like innate, I can just do this. I remember working at it, but I tried different things instead of practicing the same thing for 3 months and not seeing any improvement. If I didn't see any improvement in several days, I was like, this can't be right.
So in other words, it was in a more conscious trial and error aspect.
Absolutely,
to what you're doing.
yeah.
So this is the thing I think that gets overlooked a lot in musical practice, that we often think of repetition as being obviously it's so it's such an element of popular culture. You have the metronome, you repeat things.
And it's exactly what I was doing was repetition, except I was changing in and out variables.
That's right.
But I was playing the same tunes every day with my granddad and cousin, but I was just changing minuscule cogs in the wheel.
Right, like you were running a little science experiment on
Instead of just keeping that thing static and trying to pulverize it into my arm, or my wrist, or whatever.
And unfortunately, that's really what happens with a lot of extreme repetitive practice, where the joint does get pulverized, or the tendons do, you do get RSI type injuries if you consistently force a thing that isn't working or isn't meant to work.
The body has a way of telling you if it's not the right one.
Right, but unfortunately, if we don't listen and we just think, oh, I can muscle through this, which is the attitude a lot of people have.
And I think that attitude is, perpetuated because things are misconstrued. Obviously, before the research and all the time you've put into stuff like this, there were guys who are like, oh yeah, I sit with a metronome in practice. Like, that's not what he meant when he said that. But when
Right.
he says it in a fleeting glimpse in a Guitar World magazine, it gets misconstrued.
Well, the other thing is I don't know that for a lot of people, and I use this term the naturals, right? And I totally put you in that category of people who figured out stuff at a younger age through this process. And for you, it was maybe a bit more of a conscious process.
And I had two guys to bounce it off of, a granddad
Well, that's
and a
right,
cousin.
yeah.
And the cousin was learning with me, and the
Yeah.
granddad had been doing it for 40 years.
I am sure if you were to diagram out, if you were to somehow survey who got ability at what ages, we would find that there are commonalities just like that. Of, oh, well, I had this exposure, plus you're in that time period where we can say, oh, well, maybe your brain was super primed to learn because language happens in those 8 years and so forth.
For sure.
But yeah, this idea that there is a process of trial and error going on, which you were sort of conscious of, but I think a lot of people really aren't. You're just sitting there one day and a thing works, and then you attribute that to something that may not have, oh, well, I think it was because I repeated this 1,000 times. More likely, you actually changed stuff while you were doing that, but maybe you weren't.
You were
actually,
subconsciously changing stuff.
Absolutely. And because you have great intuition, you don't need to micromanage that process for certain people. Like if you're a Bedio, I know he said when I interviewed him that he spent 2 years working on alternate picking, and there was something going wrong, and he didn't quite know what it was, and it was something like as he was trying to play this very simple ascending scale lick that he just said he hammered away on for a long time. But he did sort of indicate that there was a moment where he sort of figured out what was wrong with it, and maybe he was like sweeping when he didn't realize, or something. There was some like lack of synchronization between the hands as he was just playing 3 notes, 3 notes, 3 notes, and 3 notes, just going up, across a position. Let's say a 3-note per string scale position. And so there was some light bulb moment where he figured out exactly what this was. He learned how to do it, and from that point on, then it was just a matter of making it habitual. But the hammering away, I think even in his case, he'll tell you he spent 2 years doing this, but I think actually throughout that 2-year period, he probably was subtly trying different things and figuring out that stuff worked a certain way or didn't work a certain way for him. And a lot of times this is done at the level of a feel, where it's not so conscious of, oh, well, I have to move the pick this way, the way we nerd out now in cracking the code. But whatever, however it works, there's no question that there's an evolution to this, and it is sort of a process of figuring out that's going on.
I kept moving the mandolin up and down.
You did.
Yeah,
Well,
I loved Sam Bush, and he played really low, and he has this like forearm thing, and it looks like he's hitting all the strings, but he
Right.
was just able to hit one.
So
So I was trying to look like Sam, thinking that was it, and then I just kept moving the mandolin until it felt right. And then when I got it right, I was like, oh, I don't look like him, but I can do the tune. So it was like, okay, well, I just don't look like him now.
But he was the first sort of template for how to do this?
Sam was, yeah, if you would have asked the 10-year-old version of me what I wanted to be when I grew up, it wasn't a mandolin player, it was Sam Bush.
Okay. And this, I think, will make a lot more sense tomorrow when we do
When we have
talk
the
about the
mandolin, yeah,
acoustic
for sure.
stuff. Which, by the way, we will be doing. We're going to do a similar conversation tomorrow, an acoustic technique. It's going to be acoustic guitar, mandolin. And I happen to have one of these torture devices, and we'll see how far I get actually trying to work it.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.
No.
So you can't put this in my hands without it just subconsciously start playing. I apologize.
I'm sorry.
Story of my life.
I don't mean to glare. It's like the ducking we set up, because that's the thing, right? Not that I constantly need to be heard. I need an actual off button in real life. I just. By the way, if you hear anything weird with the sound, you can email us at support@troygrady.com. You can ask a question through our awesome web interface, and that question can actually be more of a, hey, it sounds bad, or the sync is wrong, or something like that. But what was that? We were on track of talking about, the evolutionary things. And so the mandolin thing then was from like 8 or so until...
Yeah, maybe a
mid-teens?
touch earlier, maybe 6 or 7.
Okay.
And then into the teens, the pinnacle being, 15, 16. That's like when it was like mandolin overload.
Really?
I was really listening to a lot of a guy from, I think he was from West Virginia or Virginia. His name was Emery Lester. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't have a lot of material. And it's like trying to find stuff he did was like crazy. I had cassettes that I'd bought at a Fiddles convention.
Okay.
And the guy that played with Mike Snyder, his name was Bobby Clark. So it was like Bobby Clark and Emery Lester and Sam Bush.
Right.
And like when I was 15, I just learned every tune that any one of them ever wrote,
Yep.
Sam had released an album called Glamour and Grits, and I learned every song off of Glamour. It's like it was just like the way guys are in their teenagers years with Eddie Van Halen.
This is like the equivalent of hipsters combing through record stores trying to find stuff. Is like
yeah, except I didn't look like I was wearing a coat rack. Yeah.
I don't even know, but
hipster jokes. Nobody.
What? What?
No, I said I didn't. I just said I didn't look like I was wearing a coat rack. We have a lot of hipsters in Nashville.
Oh, hipster jokes.
And it'll be 98 degrees outside and tons of scars.
I'm that guy from Brooklyn cannot mock hipsters no matter where they live. Sorry, I've forfeited that ability.
Oh, people mock me just from being from the South. It's just return fire.
Yes, the Avid brothers, they could be any person in Greenpoint right now. Like, pretty much. Like,
That's not mocking, that's just stating a fact.
It's just a thing, yeah, right. I just didn't know they had that in Nashville until I went there, and I realized I saw the coffee shops and the whole thing,
Saw the Avid brothers.
Yeah, I saw the Avid brothers at the coffee shop. Exactly. So when the transition to guitar happened, that was a Brent Mason thing specifically?
He was the catalyst, because I thought it was I was naive, and I was like, oh, it's electric guitar. I mean, I can play some guitar.
Right.
I want to learn this solo because it was really cool. It was the Pick It Apart solo.
Yeah.
And,
that's like the eruption of.
That's the one for me. Yeah, it's I had the. And it had his ripping solo. Yeah.
Right, and that's the O'Connor Band or New Nashville.
The New Nashville Cats, right. Yeah.
And everybody in that band smoked, right? Like everyone was great.
And they were great players.
Well, that's that's not what I mean. Soon to be very legal, so don't worry, kids.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, so that album was actually not a band. It was like all of the A-list session guys. So the album had, I think, almost 100 guys on it.
Oh, so it was
or like
really
80 guys. Like the Bluegrass section of the album had like Sam Bush and Bela Fleck and Jerry Douglas and Russ Berenberg and all these guys. And then this swing tude had like I think Paul Lima on drums or Eddie Bayer's one of those guys, and then Brent and Michael Rhodes and Matt Rollins on piano. Mm-hmm. And then this next tune had Victor Wooten on it. It was just like every song had been written for like a different group of Nashville cats.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I guess that's
that was like the theme of it and the point of it. Yeah. So I think Terry McMillan, was the harmonica player. It was really ridiculous to hear somebody shred harmonica.
Mm-hmm. And back when they had that stuff on TV, like whatever was the TNN.
It was TNN. It was the American Music Shop.
Is that what it was?
That was the show, and they would be like the house band, and there is YouTube footage of them playing, and. Yeah, so that was like the album. I'd bought that album, of course, for Sam Bush and Bela Fleck, and Brent Mason happened. And then at that point, I had moved to Tennessee to play acoustic and mandolin in a theater in Pigeon Forge. For those that don't know, Pigeon Forge and Branson and all these places have a lot of theaters in them. And the guitar player saw me alternate picking. He's like, "Oh, you must be a big Paul Gilbert fan." And I was like, "I don't even know who that is." And so he made a mix CD that just had like the Who's Who, the Cliffs of Dover, the For the Love of God, Eruption. It had all the stuff that he thought that I should know, Scarified or whatever. Yeah. And then I got that, and of course I had Dixie Dregs, and it just leveled me.
But you already had some that type of. You already had those chops from mandolin at that point, like the
picking chops, the legato and the tapping chops were like way later, because I didn't get how Steve Vai or some of those guys could just play, one note. And not pick anything. I was like, that's impossible. It doesn't make sense. And I didn't know there was distortion and things that could make the guitar help you out a little bit.
Give you
Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Because you get this many notes on a mandolin, and that's it. But even with nothing, I have.
Yep. Right.
Impossible on mandolin.
So you didn't have the pull-off concept under your fingers yet?
Yeah, but it only lasted this long. And then then there's no more sustain left in a mandolin.
Did
it's
you
over.
Make an attempt to do the all hammers thing to get lightness happening?
Yeah. That thing. It was more beneficial when I was crossing strings for like. So like that's when I tend to go more hammer. I like that little slur sound that like guys like Guthrie and stuff have, where it's like a that kind of thing. But like when it goes to the string crossing, I like more hammer from nowhere. Kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So,
That whole, I remember that as sort of a moment where there always had to be an extra hand coming in to add a note on the top of the line.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it with
Yeah. Okay. But the pure alternate stuff was kind of happening already by that point.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't anything that, like I remember working on the, and like, I was like, oh, those are the notes. Okay, cool, easy. Next. But,
really?
but yeah, it just was never a challenge. Like, I saw John Petrucci recently posted the, and I remember seeing that exercise. I was like, well, okay, yeah, cool. Pick it.
He put that up recently?
Yeah, he put it up recently and said throwback Thursday or whatever to the original Steve Moore's, because that's a big hero of his too, and was like, this was an exercise I learned many moons ago or whatever.
Oh, okay.
And I remember seeing that exercise from Steve at some point in a magazine or an article or whatever. And yeah, it was like picking that stuff was never a problem because I was already so used to playing the in various formats. So like when you just go across 4 strings,
right?
It's just it was kind of already there, and I took it for granted. I didn't realize necessarily how much that would really help me out in life.
In other words, that might be actually more challenging than you imagine.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, but and it was perception. Like when I started working on the legato or the tapping or anything, I was like, oh wow, this is like what that other thing is inverted.
Mm-hmm. Now, was there a transition period of getting the chops from mandolin to adapt to this instrument, or was it sort of there?
It was just learning the harmony of the fretboard.
But just the right hand aspect of it. Was it like, oh, it feels weird because it's...
No, I played 11s for a long time because I wanted as much tension as I could to bounce the pick back to fight it.
11s on a 25.5 inch scale?
Yeah, yeah. And I played that probably more of my life than I played anything. I'm on 9s now because I like the tone.
Yeah. And you're tuned to A440?
Yeah.
Okay.
And especially like I've been delving a lot with the faux slide thing. And a lot of that stuff doesn't work without you need that slink. Especially those kind of licks, you know. So I've worked myself down to 9s for several reasons. I like the tone, especially chicken picking. It sounds a lot better. So I know this isn't a proper telly because it has a humbucker in the back, but it sounds better with the. It was harder to alternate pick on thinner strings to me.
Why, they're just wigglier?
Yeah, it was like driving on ice. Yeah, there was more. It was a smaller string moving farther than a bigger string like this, and my picking would have it. I would have 11s or 12s on this side of the guitar, and I would have 9s on this side of the guitar, if I could.
Oh, I see.
If they're in a perfect world.
Variable
string
gauge.
diameter. Yeah.
That's... Well, we're all living in a simulation anyway, so if we just yell upstairs, they could just...
Hey, put this in!
They could do that for you.
Put this
in. This is the thing which I think I wanted to talk about is where the anchor points are, just like how you hold the thing. Because I don't remember if we got into that on electric as much. Yes.
Need an extra battery for that camera.
That one's on its way?
Yeah.
Okay. It's gone.
Yeah,
all right. Should be, I think, on your desk, actually, in the charger.
All right. We're on wide, though, so keep talking.
Okay. No problem. What was I saying?
You're saying anchor points?
Yeah. Like, because we talked about in the acoustic interview, which we did, this is the one that you can watch on the site right now, we really kind of got into like where the arm rests on the guitar and, you know, like especially, and you were like, oh, I'm on the mustache here and I'm not, you know, and when we slide off the strings and how we track. And this is a thing that a lot of people do instinctively, but it can sometimes help. And I've been, in interviews now, I'm always asking like, well, what part of your arm actually touches, like where do you feel it actually resting on the body?
Oh, same spot, like that same spot on, I have a very universal anchor point in my mind.
Yeah.
On the wherever it be a 6 saddle or a 3 saddle or Gibson style or whatever.
Right.
I try to get to feel exactly. There's a moment in my hand where I can feel the open, what I'm calling the open string underneath this part of my hand.
So under the thumb side.
Exactly.
Okay,
There's an exact moment where I can feel it, and if I feel it, I'm like, okay, you cannot play the bass strings right now, but it feels good.
I see.
And then if I move to the bass strings, I kind of, if I were to exaggerate it, I would do that.
You have to track off
Yeah.
the strings.
Yeah.
So I think for simplicity, we can just call this thumb heel, and maybe this is pinky heel, right? Just to make it easy.
Sure.
But these 2 points are like reference points for a lot of players.
Yeah,
right?
my reference point is actually this part that's calloused up, that nublet right there.
The nublet.
Yeah, another medical term for those out there.
That's
Nublet, L-E-T, nublet. Yeah, I don't know what that is, but it's
That bone?
that bone is just being
Scaphoid or
calloused up,
something,
and
maybe? I don't know.
it's what I don't roll around on it.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel it, like, you know how the soft of your hand is right there?
Yeah.
I feel the soft of my hand, and that it's almost like there's a callus where that has just, over the years, sat against, the bridge.
So,
And I've predominantly played all Fender bridges, so it's like this is the most familiar style, whether it be 6 style. I've played the least amount of Gibson style over the years, but the principle's still the same.
Gibson style bridge versus Fender bridge, meaning what?
Yeah,
Like
meaning, so like a Telly will have, this. I'm calling this a Strat style bridge,
Okay.
Even though it's not.
it's a floating flat
It's a
thing.
floating with a 6 saddle, and the Telly has that ashtray. For me, on a Gibson, there's the actual,
there's the bridge, and then there's the tailpiece.
Yeah, exactly, and there's the wraparound and everything. And there's a moment where I'm anchoring, if I were to play a Gibson, on the back of the bridge.
Yeah.
With that nublet.
Right, and that's a mandolin thing also, right?
That feels really good. Like, I love playing Les Pauls. I've had this like almost pseudo going in 60 seconds thing with them, where every time I found the right Les Paul, I never had the money, and every time I had the money, I could never find the right Les
okay.
Paul. So it's like Eleanor.
Gotcha. I think your camera came back. Just double check the focus on it, make sure it looks
Yeah,
decent, because some of these electronic ones don't remember when you change your batteries.
I didn't know if, it should be.
It's like leaving the house and coming back, and your dog doesn't know who you are anymore.
But yeah, like the anchoring thing feels really good on a Gibson, because
Okay.
it does feel like a mandolin.
Yeah, because you
The
have that
most.
ramp back there, of the
Yeah,
strings
yeah.
going back to the tailpiece.
And that's a hard
Yep.
rake. Or
So we're
whatever.
that's the thing I want to talk about tomorrow, because I cannot get comfortable on that thing. It just
On a
it's
mandolin
all,
or a
it's all
Gibson?
elbow
Or
on
both?
the mandolin.
Okay.
No, the Les Paul I have no problem with. That actually is the guitar I own, but the mandolin itself, that looks good. Yeah. Okay.
Everyone can see it.
Cool.
Just right to support. Tell me if I'm in this.
The mandolin is just all sharp edges, and I feel like you probably have a way of navigating that pointy forest.
I think also too, there's a thing of like, if you've played this your whole life, that feels like so crazy to shrink down. To me, I've played that more than I've played anything else. So it's like, I feel like I'm on this. I got so much room. I
Right.
feel like it's easy to play.
So where are you up here then on the where on the body, or do you feel the
Probably
forearm?
changes when I'm sitting and when I'm standing. I can play like this pretty comfortably. If I were to, I always have a tendency to like prop it like this, and I feel the point right in here.
Yeah.
But that would change if it was like you were like, all right, Andy, you got to really buckle down and play something crazy. Like I would play more like this for if I had to play something really insane, or some of those kind of things. Those types of licks.
So that's classical, more of a classical position.
Yeah, and it's
Left
more
knee.
just to kind of get everything in the left hand at the right position. And I noticed there's a little shift in where I'm at on the body in the right arm.
Yeah.
But it's not much. It's just enough to get me to feel comfortable.
And so for the more articulate stuff, you feel like it lifts it up a little higher, and something is more accessible that way somehow.
And it may just be in my head. Because I play live a lot, and I'm standing up, and it's not.
Okay.
I'm not one of these guys live.
Got it. So when we do, was there a point where you entered this? Do you start doing like more 3-note per string like shred rudiment type playing on electric, or had you already done that homework on mandolin enough? Like the
Okay, mandolin, there's not really like the note per string rhetoric
Right.
that exists on guitar. So when it came to guitar, it was more like applying things like, or I was learning those types of lines on guitar and not thinking about how many string sets there was.
Sure.
First guy I saw do 3-note per strings was like John Petrucci in his Rock Discipline video.
Okay.
And I think he was doing the that kind of thing, and I was like, oh, okay, cycle it, move it, and it seemed more natural than the things that I had been working on previously.
Right. Okay. And that stuff.
I got the cart in front of the horse
Where?
as far as like what I was working on. And 3 notes per string. Like I didn't go at it like I need to do this to get to this. I just was like, oh, I was going to do that.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the mechanical stuff you had spent 10 years, perhaps, already kind of trial and error.
And the ignorance of youth and overconfidence was a big thing. I can play that Brent Mason solo,
Yeah.
and then immediately you're humbled.
Can we do? Can we apply the device and do some gainy stuff to talk about that the scalar type playing?
Yeah.
Because I want to. You do that very effortlessly, and I think this is a thing that. You're sort of a textbook for certain kind of wrist playing, like really in a very relaxed fashion. This is why I'm asking about the anchor points, because you just kind of plant it down here, and then just the hand moves for the most part. I'll let you keep. I'll watch you do that all day. It's fine with me.
I don't know.
Keep alling. Keep aldemiollering. That's what was that, a Mediterranean Sunday?
Yeah, he was a big influence early on because the things he played translated to me learning guitar. Mm-hmm. He picked everything. It was a great person to listen to. Eric Johnson, even though I didn't do the correct Eric Johnson thing, I mean, I just had the audio, so I was alternate picking things that he was like using his version of the up, down, the economy picking.
Right, yeah.
I just thought he was alternate picking.
Right.
Because it all had that articulation.
So you are aware now that there's a sweep component too.
There is absolutely a sweep component,
doing.
but I just never thought of it, so I was just alternate picking it all.
Right. Okay.
I looked for things that sounded the way that I knew that I could play them. Like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani were more difficult because it didn't sound like the way that music sounded to me.
Right.
It was all slurry and washy. Whereas Steve Morse was like, it was like, and it was easy to learn those tunes that I wanted to learn. And then of course, I realized I had to work on everything else too. This is so awkward for me.
What is? Having this thing on the fretboard?
Yeah. No.
You're used to it by now. All right. Can you get situated in like where you would normally play on, sort of near the pickup, and just place your hands. Just put the pick, let's say, on the G string and freeze it for a second, and then I'm gonna grab focus on you there. Okay. And we should be rolling. And for this, if you can point a little bit more that way, and we'll get more light on your pick.
Oh, I gotta stay out of that key. I'll hit your apparatus.
Yep. For reference, I would not like you to hit my apparatus.
Wow.
No, that's fine.
Never rub another man's rhubarb, right?
Never.
That's what he says. It's blatantly specified.
The first thing you did was like 2 note per string, repeating, the triplety, pentatonic triplets. So you're starting that on an upstroke or down?
Almost everything starts on an upstroke or downstroke. Even if I have to, even with a runway kind of couple of notes. That starts with a down.
Right. So where the little chunks that are being repeated there, I think they're triplets.
Yeah, the important thing to me is being able to play them at a brisk tempo and be able to not be married to the sequence.
Right, but in the case of the most generic version of the sequence.
Yeah, most generic?
Sort of.
Yeah, that's all downstroke.
Okay. Can you do that just on like a...
Or G and D? Sorry, hit your pinky thing.
Got it. Perfect.
Yeah, it's really weird to be like, I can't play there. Don't go up. Don't go up.
Yeah. Well, that's why I only interview improvisers, because you know how to work around the obstacles that we throw at you in video game fashion.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. And if you do that, trying to start any of those units on an upstroke, does it feel really
Let's try
hard?
it. I've never thought about it. That's fine.
Okay. And I can't really see from the angle I'm sitting exactly what's going on, but we can look at it
It's all just
later.
D minor pentatonic.
Right, but in terms of like what the movements are, sometimes.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say sometimes you think you're playing a thing on a certain pick stroke, and your hand will flip it and not tell you.
Yeah.
You know, you'd be like, oh, I inserted a half nothing there, and now I'm upstroke.
Yeah, I don't want to swear to it because obviously the tape will never lie, but it feels like everything. Let's just say, here's the downstroke. Here's the upstroke. It stays the same.
It did. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Now the other thing, another real simple exercise being of the 3-note per string sort of variety would be if you just were to do, let's say overlapping like the 6-note pattern, you have 3 notes on one string, 3 notes on let's say. So if you were to do just 2 strings and just play it ascending and then again, that.
Let me do something in the same position. So.
Right. So now, do you notice when you do the descending version of that, I think you might feel some of that happening.
There's a touch, yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, there's a
to
touch.
get over.
Yeah.
The divide.
I essentially feel 3 different things when I alternate pick.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the one that is what you said when I started, the one that was descending, and then the cross picking. Now I know there's a subgenre of each one of those that broadens out in what my hand's doing, but what I feel, I'm turning on that switch. I have 3 or 4 different switches.
But when you do, let's say the ascending version of that, it doesn't. Do you feel like the need to turn on the finger movement, or is that fine without it?
It depends on the tune.
Right. And it looks like there's less of that to me, and that makes sense based on the 8,000 hours of your fingers that I've watched at this in very unhealthy fashion, I'm sure. What's really funny is we put stuff on YouTube now. They have in sort of hypersensitive filtering algorithms now to try and keep bad content off the platform, and they always mark our videos as inappropriate for children. And I have to go in and click please review because it's just too much flesh, I think, on the screen. Too many body parts moving around. It's just like, I swear.
Sensor, just a giant sensor block over all of this.
Too many giblets.
Yeah, too many giblets.
What about, so if we do that across, let's say, taking that across all the strings, just in a straight line at a reasonable speed, starting on downstroke. All right, and that's a different thing. Okay.
Do I need to play it all in one line?
Well, these are different movements, actually. So if you do the overlappy one.
Is that one the overlappy one?
Where it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And
that one?
Okay, so.
What's overlapping?
Overlapping, but what I mean by that is, there's so many.
Is it this?
That.
Okay. I just need to learn your lingo, man.
That's right. I'm inventing.
Yeah, I'm gonna switch. So that's overlapping. Versus. That's a different one? That's not overlapping?
Right, well, that's overlapping also, but the distinction between those two patterns from a technical perspective for a lot of people is that the one that only moves forward in leapfrog fashion and never
doesn't jump back down?
doesn't go back is a little bit easier for a lot of people.
Okay.
Because the hand movement is simpler. And if you just do that at sort of a moderate speed, actually, it would be interesting to see.
I forgot which one I'm doing. That's stuff like I think a lot of people practice.
Yeah.
To get my alternate picking where it is, I never practiced that. That's something that I can do.
Because of the practice.
Because of practicing all this other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Right, it's funny. And I think the exercise mentality, unfortunately, you know, if you do spend a lot of time playing this stuff, it can impact your vocabulary in a sort of a negative way.
Absolutely, because you're teaching your body this is how I play guitar and how I play music, versus if you're practicing things that are maybe heads of tunes or classical pieces or fiddle tunes or whatever. You're learning things that are all out of sync, and you start associating vocabulary with, I just need something to strike the note, whether that's up or down or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Absolutely. I mean, you are what you eat, right? In terms of
Am I
your
pizza?
You are pizza.
Am I pizza?
But yeah, like to be clear, I'm asking you to play these things because they're easy to. It allows me to see certain movements and it means something to me. But I don't mean to imply that we should all be doing.
No,
this
no,
stuff
no. I
necessarily.
absolutely got it. I just wanted to interject that out of moral obligation.
It's true.
Because people are learning to play guitar, and I feel like it's a moral obligation to be like, don't just exercise.
Officer Wood would like to tell the class that you
can be in the gym, but if you don't get on the field, you're not playing the game, or something like that.
Maybe.
Is that true? Yeah.
Can we do the forward leapfrog one again at we did it at the moderate speed. Let's do it a little bit faster. And
Let me refresh what is forward leapfrog. Is that is that this one?
No, I'm sorry. The one that only moves this way.
So
and
that's
doesn't backtrack. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for scorekeeping, we're in D minor or F, whatever you like. Is that moderate?
Yeah, and then we can just take it up a little bit.
Let me get it clean. Boy, it gets fast.
Okay, sure. And that, are you consciously only moving the wrist when you do that, or are you not really thinking about it too much?
My brain is telling me clean.
Clean, right.
Yeah, my brain's kind of just being like, okay, get it tight, get it clean. And I do notice that everything gets smaller as far as pick stroke, how much time is wasted.
Yeah. So if you just do, let's say, we were talking about the anchor points, if you just play on the lower string and you're just doing a single note, you don't even have to
That's
play
actually
anything.
the most uncomfortable place for me to play.
All the way down here?
Yeah, I don't like the way that feels. Because the thing in my fat of my hand has got nothing there.
I see.
Yeah, I don't like
it's an
playing
anchor.
there. You know what, when I say I don't like playing there, obviously I play on the low string all the time. I'm just saying, like, if you're really looking at it from a scientific standpoint, that's the least comfortable. The most comfortable would be the G string.
Because you have the resting.
Yeah, and of all the innate jokes that go with that. Yeah, that's the most comfortable. And I'll tell you something else, playing nines, I don't like how flimsy they are on the low as far as a picking thing goes. Okay. But the tone is so cool, I just deal with it.
Right, and that's 9 to like 46 or something? Or
something,
48,
yeah. Whatever NYXL is. That the pink one, it's a black.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Pink.
I like it.
It's just you can't get that zinginess out of a heavier string. I feel like I can control almost the vowel sound out of the string gauge. So it's worth it. It's worth the trade-off.
But your point, though, taken is that there is a point where you will get onto a low enough string where you got to move onto the body.
And I try not to move onto the body because that really changes. If you're looking down the barrel of the neck and the strings, I don't like my hand doing this. I want it to move across the string sets. As pleasantly as possible.
It's almost like if you could install a dummy string below the E string. That would be actually.
Ben Eller would say play a 7 string.
Well, there you. But
that's why you call it a dummy string.
Exactly. Sorry, Ben.
At Ben Eller Guitars.
So the other thing I wanted to ask is muting point. Where do you feel that happening? Is that on the pinky side or the thumb side? Yeah, like if you're on the G string.
It's a little inside the cleft. I'm calling like whatever that is. It's a little inside on the pinky.
Okay.
A little
So
there.
when you're muting the G string, that's how
where that is.
You're hitting it.
Same for D. A starts actually hitting back and forth in the cleft.
Okay.
And E is almost dead middle of the hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about the high string? Yeah, where are you up there?
Kind of the same.
Okay.
It's with the high E, it's the farthest into the meat of the pinky side of the hand.
So it's moving then as you track across the string. The muting point is like sort of traveling in this area.
Yeah,
here.
exactly.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
So if you were to play on the G string, the comfort spot, if you're and just play when you play, if you were to just play a pick stroke at a moderate speed, with that you could just fret any note, even if it was tremolo. Don't worry too much about trying to play super fast. Do you notice the downstroke sort of moving away from the?
Like yeah, if I'm just sitting here, but it's really hard because in live, I mean really in practice and in studio and in live, when I play a downstroke, I'm trying to achieve a tone. Like I don't know what that means. I don't know what it means to play a downstroke. Do I need to play a downstroke? That's a different downstroke then.
Yeah.
So maybe the context would be if I play a line into it and stop on the last note, maybe give you the most honest answer. That's okay. That's the most honest answer if you can film that.
Your comment on that is completely spot on. It's almost impossible to just play a single note and have it be anything like what it would be in the context of other notes, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
weird.
even in life, like there is no point in life that I would play a downstroke as if I was alternate picking a line.
That's right. Yeah.
There's no way because it sounds super lame and not like music.
Right, yeah. Right. But even though there might be a slow portion in a piece where you have to hit a whole note, and that's not.
I'm trying to get that tone, and that sass.
Yeah, and
so
that's
like,
going to be this movement.
Yeah, it's like a motorcycle.
Absolutely.
It's that. Those are my more like, even if I'm going on an upstroke, but I think the principle's the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So then maybe a simple way to make fake context for this would be if you just had any 3-note string fingering on the G string and you just played 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2,
exactly.
3, 1, 2, like a D Miolo type. A single string.
Oh.
That's what I was getting at. That form change right there.
Yeah.
Did you feel the switch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that's like the high gear mode.
I do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do this shift of the H over into 4.
And I will tell you my mentality. I can't tell you physically what's happening, but I can tell you my mentality that makes the physical thing happen. And that is when I think of that many notes, I think of a specific tone that they all make. And there's a specific gap and lack thereof in between the notes. And when I'm shifting gears, my brain isn't saying go faster. My brain's saying decrease the size of the notes because you need to make the tone into
right. Yeah.
Yeah, mm-hmm. and I think some of that maybe mindset is what gave me an advantage when I was developing my alternate picking versus someone who is coming about it. And there's no right or wrong way. I'm prefacing that, but but someone who's coming at it and like I can't alternate pick fast or I have problems. Playing inside and outside string sets. Like my brain doesn't do that when I'm going into like hyper mode. It's like, okay, now the notes sound like this. Right. And like when I'm thinking about the super hyper mode, I'm trying to fake it and play you one of those.
Right, it's impossible.
Yeah. I can play you maybe 6. I can play 4. It starts to change once I start playing more lines. It changes.
Absolutely. So the simplest, I think, is probably just the single string version of it, where you just play 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So if we were to do well, that's kind of tricky. That's why the overlap one works, because it uses the same shift. It's the same mode, right?
I see what you're getting at.
Yeah. So the overlapping one works because it allows you to start in a downstroke, play 6 notes, use that mode, and also move to a new string at the same time.
Exactly. Now, where that doesn't work is that's not applicable in so much more of like alternate picking vocabulary
Right.
because I rarely use that line.
Yeah, and it's triplets, which is whatever rhythm is going to work for whatever tempo and so forth.
And even if using sixes over
Yeah.
one or whatever.
So
or
my interest in
sixes
here
over
is
four,
completely
yeah.
clinical, and it's just like
Absolutely.
that mode. Like show us how
What
it works.
happens?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
so
changing into that gear.
And when you do that, it's like the whole thing locks in like a gun, right?
Absolutely.
So where
And I feel that.
Where are the anchor? So the anchor point's thumb when you lock into that mode.
I can feel it in this jacket a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not playing from the forearm,
Mm-hmm.
but when things lock in and I get into like that zone, I can just. I don't know if my nerves are more aware of the clothing touching the arm, or if there is something twisting in there that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
Just clinically speaking.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I don't feel it there. But I feel it right there when I do those, like, what is that, 7 notes?
Okay.
And I
what
want
about-
I wanted that, like, to just play that real quick to just, like, show that, like, maybe the inside and outside string set keeps changing, but the locked in thing is still there.
Right, and there's some of this happening to get the.
And I feel like it's pretty minimal in comparison to other players that I see that really play from that point of view.
Well, right. It's not the picking motion. It's a thing you do to get from one string to another.
exactly.
In your case,
It's like I'm changing. If I were to exaggerate the whole thing, if I were to just take everything, obviously you know this, you've watched a million hours of it. I'm just trying to teach it or talk about it from inside my head.
Yep.
I definitely feel it.
Yep. No, absolutely. And now, as far as form on the top two strings, then that's still comfortable for you because you
What
have
is
this.
top, bass or treble?
I'm sorry, the treble strings.
Okay.
The highest two strings. You still have the resting point that you like
Oh yeah.
on there, so it's easy and comfortable for you to have that
Yeah.
locked in form also on the top
I
two strings.
think yeah. Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, so if you were to do the same sort of technique.
Play cleanly. Come on.
Okay, and anchor, the muting spots that we talked about, it's still sort of wandering in that central area there.
Yeah, there wasn't a ton of muting in that line. Let's see. A little more muting for you. Trying to change as many things as I can in there so you can see
Well,
what
there's that,
happens.
and also let's just do a pattern that doesn't change at all.
Oh, okay, sorry. I
For
thought it
that.
was supposed to. Yeah, sorry.
Don't.
I was like, how many times can I play this a different way?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Um,
So if we were to do
Like
let's
this
say-
one? Is that cool?
Sure. Let's
Okay.
try that.
And that's as fast as I can go right
Okay, got it. Yeah, no. And now
now. You give me another Red Bull, we probably put 5 more BPM
have
on
we
it
given you
easy.
any Red Bulls?
No,
Don't feed the gremlins
Do
after
not.
midnight.
Do not.
Red Bulls.
Do we have Red Bulls?
We can get it faster.
And then just the top string, just the 3 notes. Yeah. So let's just do that at a.
It's really hard. I've never practiced this stuff.
Well,
It's really actually kind of difficult to think about it this way.
All right, very good.
It got a little squirrely at the end, but I feel like I was.
You're getting a puppy snap for all this later. Whatever that is.
Is that the Snapchat where it puts the nose on you?
You
and
know,
the
that's
ears?
really funny, and it sounds very porny when I say it that way, but that's not what I mean.
Oh, okay.
There was a Wes
I
Anderson
thought that's
movie.
what it was, and
No.
the tongue comes out like the Instagram babes.
No, that's what everybody's going to think. There's an awesome Wes Anderson movie out right now as a dog owner, which you like called Isle of Dogs.
Okay.
And there's the fictional product in that movie is called Puppy Snaps, and it's
Puppy
just like
Snaps.
things that
It's
they
a treat.
eat.
Yeah,
It's a
Scooby
treat.
snacks.
It's a Scooby snack.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, great movie if you're into dogs or puppets or Wes Anderson.
Oh, that's the. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is gonna sound crazy when I say it out loud, but the Japanese nuclear fallout claymation.
Yes, it's like Fabulous Mr. Fox or Fantastic Mr. Fox, which was another stop motion thing he did.
Yeah.
And this is a stop motion, but I actually didn't fully get the whole Japanese aspect. I'm sure there was a comment being made about something, because they play with language. Some people speak Japanese, some people speak English. The dogs speak English.
I just saw the preview, and I thought there was some kind of nuclear fallout where dogs could speak English, but we're in Japan.
Oh, it's dystopian, but it's sort of like a Watership Down, where the dogs speak to each other, kind of.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like that.
Misleading preview.
Yeah, a little bit.
If anybody from
cool,
Isle of Dogs
cool
is
flick though.
watching this,
Worth seeing.
fix that.
I would like to thank you for submitting to this rather invasive investigation of
Yeah.
picking mechanics.
Are we addressing any
Oh yeah, well,
comments?
I think we should do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at. We've got now 26 questions on the platform. which
Okay.
We can. Well, let's see. Now, we didn't implement the sorting by upvote, so I'm just going to scan this and see if any of them are particularly highly upvoted. So we'll take a look at those first. What do we got here? Okay, this one's. Let's check out this one. Hi, Andy. I'm going to start this one. This one is about practice. And it says, hi, Andy, I'm curious how you structure your practice time if you really don't have much time to practice. And this comes from our platform user, Montreal 543.
Okay, yeah. So I don't really think about practice time per se unless it is a specific song or piece of a song, rather, that is going to be played live. When I'm thinking of practice time, and probably what I'm assuming you mean is like my improvement on my technique or my facility. And within that, what I try to do is find a song or write something that has the problematic thing that I'm trying to solve. The biggest example would be when I wrote Truth and Lie. I wrote it on mandolin, and I went to play it on electric guitar, and it didn't make any sense because the intervals were too wide. So I had to figure out a way to play the head of the tune, which has four one note per string. That's the problem. And to play it up at tempo, I had to figure out a way to do it. So when I started practicing that, I had written music to solve the technique issue, vice versa. So I'm always got musicality at the forefront of my practice. I like to warm up a little bit, and if I'm having trouble, maybe I had a bad night the night before improvising, I will just give myself one chord, no matter what chord, and just play over that and try to be as creative as possible with the least amount of effort on technique. Vice versa, if I played the night before and I had what I felt like was sloppy technique, I would just address it through maybe favorite songs or licks, or, kicking open a YouTube video of somebody like Al Di Meola playing and be like, okay, I had bad alternate picking, let's play along to something that I know I can alternate pick. Yeah, so that's kind of the way I've focused my practice time into musicality, always being at the forefront and trying to play a game around how to get the music to accomplish the technique practice.
Right, so obviously this works
Less
for you because-
exercisey. Not exercisey.
Not exercisey.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of etude-ing things, in the sense of having there be a creative element where you maybe write some cool little thing that has the technique in it that you want to work on, right? Like, huge fan of that. In fact, I think a lot of classical players could take a page out of the rock book in a way of like, oh, that two-measure thing, that's hard. Rather than drilling that, hey, why don't you just turn that into some cool little string skipping thing or whatever. And I say classical, I'm thinking about like violinists and people who are conservatory trained. There are all these incredible little sections of in any Bach violin sonata or partita. There's some two-measure thing in there that could instantly become, like if it was a rock tune, that'd be the solo section, and you'd morph that into 5 bars of awesomeness, and then work on that, and there's your technique, right?
Exactly. And I've dabbled in that a little bit. I've hit some just moments of classical stuff just to take, especially violin stuff, because it just translates to electric guitar so easily.
But do you, now, this is a pretty large question, though, in the sense of how to structure one's practice time, because your needs now are different than when you were a kid learning, like, rudiment stuff.
Right.
So when you were doing the early of building the chops in the first place, were you hammering away on the hours, or were you not really thinking even about structure so much?
It still was the same structure. I was trying to play Sam Bush's Brilliancy, for instance, and I would just spend hours trying to play that. Mandolins always sound good in hardwood floors and bathrooms and things like that, so I would just spend like 2 hours, in the kitchen or in the bathroom, like with all the natural reverb, just playing through the tune, and the practice being the technique focus being subsidiary to concentrating on what it sounds like. Yeah.
So there wasn't really this thought like I have to do 30 minutes of scales.
Oh,
and then 20
no.
minutes of
None of that.
arpeggios.
None of that. Because I feel like the problem is we as, and this is going to sound hippie, pausing to preface that as well. We can't gauge when our mind will actually unlock the door or be receptive to something. So I think when you put like a premeditated timestamp on how long you're allowed to, what if it was that next 5 minutes that would have been the key?
Right.
Like, I just go, man, I don't feel good about this. I'm going to play it. Or maybe that guy really inspired me. I'm going to try to play like that until I'm tired of playing like that.
Right.
I think focused practice is far more beneficial than 3 hours of drills. I think 40 minutes or 30 minutes of being focused and aware of your hands. We as guitar players are the world's worst to just be like, all right, I'm going to practice for 3 hours.
Right.
And we're just playing nothing for 3 hours and probably playing it not great.
Right, or worse, perhaps the same way for 3 hours, which isn't really helping anything.
And that's way more detrimental than like being aware of like, ooh, this is what this feels like if I go.
Yep.
Like that kind of thing is way more beneficial. So I hope that's some help in answering the
I
question.
think that's super helpful because I think the mentality around practice, you just say the word and I instantly think, oh God, it's very repetitive and rote and it's no creativity happening there. And that's not
That's
how
working the guitar. That's not playing the guitar.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Thanks, Montreal, for the I think a question probably a lot of us still think about even now. Let's take a look at what we got. We have, by the way, 31 answered questions. I doubt we'll get to all of them.
Sure.
What am I got here? Okay, so here's one from, let's take a look at this one. This one comes from DJ Chella, which platform user, and he says, "Hi Andy, did you hit any dead ends or plateaus that you stuck at for a while, either months or years, before finding the missing piece of the jigsaw? I got stuck for many years with inaccurate picking technique until seeing Troy's insight. I'm about the same, I assume he means age, as him. In other words, old. Wondering if you had any issues or if it's been plain sailing most of the way."
Or what if it's height? I'm just the same height as
I'm about
Troy.
the same weight as him.
Almost exactly. Yeah, I did. I played mandolin, so I'm going to swing around here because I'm watching the camera and not me. I was bad to play like that when I first played guitar. So when I went to play anything one note per string, I was like, oh, you can't reach it.
No.
So for 7 or 8 months, I sounded horrible while I got used to putting my hand down on the back of the neck to play all the... Now I can play all the really wide stuff kind of comes out.
And we can talk about that tomorrow because I think with the really tiny neck that you have there,
it sits in there.
It sits on this thing here, right?
So the answer is yes. The answer is I was aware that I was less of a player on the things that I could do previously, but I knew it was for the greater good. And once I got better at and better at this, then everything that I could play was back, and then there was so much more available.
But if you think of a graph of like your ability,
that was a major like, I was like this, and I was like, I can't play anything that I want to play. And then I got my hand right, and then it like.
How long was that plateau?
Oh man, like it was there almost a year. I was just trying to figure out because you see, at that point I was discovering guys like Guthrie or whatever, and they were playing really wide things. Sean Lane before Guthrie, and I couldn't figure out how all the wide stuff was happening.
I see, and that was probably early on in your switch to guitar, I assume.
Yeah, early 20s.
Early 20s. So
22,
that was
23.
several years into already you've been playing.
Yeah.
And even still, you hadn't really kind of got the hand position.
No, I actually did the Guitar Mageddon thing before I fixed my left hand technique.
Okay.
I just didn't play any of those things.
And that's a thing which I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you won that, did you not?
Yeah.
What year was that?
I was in 2003. I was 21 when it started and 22 when it ended. It was like a four-month competition.
And that was out in LA somewhere, or where?
It started at your regional store, and you win there and you win there and you win there, and then you win the region, and then you go to Vegas, and then you win it.
Oh,
so,
Vegas.
Yeah, it was like, I think it was like 3,200 or something like that.
Yeah, and for me, that sounds terrifying, but I know you grew up in competitions. Like, that's just a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I actually got into that competition not out of narcissism. My buddies entered me as a joke. And they were like, hey, man, I went to Guitar Center to buy some strings, and the guy heard me, like, checking out something. He's like, oh, you should enter this contest. And I'll never forget it. I was like, oh yeah? And he goes, yeah, it's called Guitarmageddon. I just looked right at him and I go, Guitarmageddon. And he was like, no, it's really a big deal, you know? And I was like, okay, cool, whatever, I don't care. And then my buddies were like, if you enter this, they don't play.
Yeah.
They were like, if you enter this, we'll pay for your dinner tonight and your bar tab. I was like, okay, let's go. So it started as a joke and ended up getting ridiculously serious. And then by the end of it, they give you all these guitars and amps and $10,000 in cash. And I got my granddad a $10,000 Martin. That's what I did. Yeah.
That's what you did?
That's what I did with money.
What guitar?
It was a D40. My granddad used to always love D45s
Right.
at fiddlers conventions. Like I said, didn't have
That's
to come from a lot of money.
the super fancy one.
That's the one that's got it down the neck
Yeah.
and instead of across the headstock. And when Martin found out, the guitar was actually supposed to be more, but the Guitar Center guy got in touch with Martin, and when they found out, they gave it for exactly the $10,000 price.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there was some love to help that happen, and it was really cool. It was like one of the highlights of my life. I mean, when you get to the end of it, you've already won freaking 11, 12 grand in gear before you even get to the finale. So I was like, well, I've already got all this stuff. What am I going to do? You know.
This is what happens with musicians, kids. You give them a bunch of money, they buy some vintage instrument, and then they don't have any money anymore.
Yeah, I was like, I've got all this stuff, so I'm just going to buy this for my granddad.
Didn't Chris Thiele blow it all on a Lloyd Loar or something?
I don't know if blow it all would be right, because I would buy a Lloyd Loar if I had 85
You
grand
would,
to
right?
it. Yeah, I would.
But he had actually, I think that I forget what the name of the prize is, but he won several hundred grand for thing, and I think he bought, I don't know how much Lloyd Loars are going for now, but they're over six figures, or have been for a
They
while.
can be. A lot of times, guys that are of celebrity status will find someone who has one who is willing to let it go at a much lower cost. I've heard of like bursts and stuff being sold to A-list guys because this guy doesn't play. This other guy obviously is going to play it at the Royal Albert Hall or whatever.
Right, or maybe it's a loan. I think there's a thing now
They can
where...
do loan like the Stradivarius.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, exactly.
So anyways,
Cool.
yeah, so that you know, I don't know how we got
So
on that.
yeah, Guitarmageddon. I forget how that came up, but it's fascinating, and you're looking at the winner of Guitarmageddon here.
Yeah, and I said if I get out of this with any kind of decent placing, I'm
Yep.
not going to do this stuff anymore. So that was my last one.
Okay. This question, I'm going to start it and end it because it says, what string gauge do you prefer and why, which I think is a subject we've sort of talked quite a bit about, actually.
Yeah, it depends on the instrument, but in general, I use 9s on Fender scale length and 10s on Gibson scale length.
Okay. And this is from platform user Hank, who actually also would like to note that you are a handsome young lad, apparently. So,
I'm sorry. I don't know how to say that.
but you're on 9s now. That's the thing.
Yep.
And it's because you're in your old age. It's
tone, man.
it's tone.
Yeah, it's tone for that pop.
Yep.
Even with the that thing. Even with the darker shared EQ of the Cornford, that's
Right.
still way brighter than
When you do
11s
that stuff,
for a while.
it just sounds like a Dukes of Hazzard episode to me.
Yeah.
Like them City Slickers are in town in a beat up like.
That's like
Ford
the
Nova.
General Lee flying through there, and it's like, oh, them Duke boys done it this time, you know.
And so do you feel like the 9s is kind of where you'll be on?
Probably on. I mean,
25.5 inch.
Yeah, probably. I also love the attitude I can give them. You know, just being able to control that a lot more is really important. With that said, if I could just alternate pick only, and somebody took away all the attitude playing, I would play 11s probably.
11s on this scale length.
Yeah, probably.
Because that's pretty heavy.
Yeah, I like the way it feels in the right hand.
Yeah. I mean, that little, the 22.5 inch, which you were playing around before, those are 12s, but
Yeah.
you know, it's probably more like a 10 on a 25.5.
That feels closer to like an 11 to
Does
me.
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I like
I played 11s for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, long time.
and then of course, which we'll talk maybe about on acoustic, is the insane, you know, the insanity of 13s or whatever that is with the wound.
Yeah, I do, on that I do 12 on the top end. They call it the Bluegrass set that Diodario makes. It's 12 for the treble string and then whatever the heavy low end.
Well, that's what I have on the D28. Actually.
Yeah,
So if you don't like
that's
that,
ideal. That's
then
perfect.
you
Yeah,
like
if you
that.
don't like that, you don't like nice things.
Okay. This is cool because I think this sort of points up to something that you bring to the table, which is kind of unique, which is you're like, I think of you as like a Stargate that goes between all these musical styles because you grew up doing, you know, all this stuff. So, no, that's not a good
No, I like it. I
know.
just was like, yeah.
I thought you would like that one. But this one says, hey Andy, I love the bluegrass style, but I can't seem to get into it. Could you recommend an album or artist that would be cool for a rock metal fan like me? My favorite guitarist is Paul
Newgrass Revival, Bela Fleck. any and or both of all of their projects. That has the intensity that I think rock metal guys look for, especially if you like the Dixie Dregs and Steve Morse. There's a lot of overlap in a Newgrass Revival instrumental, and like say Sam Bush's Stingray. There's a lot of overlap that in the rock metal world. So Sam Bush, Newgrass Revival, Bela Fleck, treat yourself.
And that's Stingray is a tune or an album?
It's a tune.
It's a tune.
Off
So-
of Glamour and Grits album with Sam Bush.
Glamour and Grits.
But Newgrass Revival is
Yeah.
great because you have both of them. I'd say in the world of Spotify's and YouTube, look for the instrumentals. It's easy to get turned off if you don't like the vocals, because, and I don't even mean that because the vocals sound like all old and dated. They don't. I'm just saying like bluegrass melody lines have a specific thing, and if that doesn't get good to you, then you may not like it.
Do they
But
do the High and
instrumentals-
Lone Summer Brother sound like the?
Not
Newgrass
really.
Revival?
A little bit. It's got its own thing, but definitely start with the instrumentals.
Okay, cool. And I think that's interesting because I feel like maybe, we like to talk about the pop music. It's, again, old man yells at cloud. Everything's worse now than it used to be in the good old days. But if anything can come from this rapid decentralization, it seems, of pop music, it's that you can now go on Spotify and just listen to anything.
Yeah.
And it's all there, and the recommendations are cool, and there's the sharing.
And you don't have to
aspect
worry about what your friends think is cool or not because nobody's heard of each other's music.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not like, oh, you don't have Michael Jackson's Bad or Beat It, then you're not cool. It's like
Right.
that era's gone.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Adam, are we running out of batteries and/or disk space or something?
Yes, we might be on this one. Disk space.
Okay, that's cool. I think we have so many of these here, and I think a lot of these are things that we have touched upon in various.
Is there any
various
more
ways.
that's like a really standout one?
Let's
just from my
see.
curiosity?
We talked about. Wait a minute. Oh, I got to end this one first. Okay, sorry. Well, I'll scan them.
Sure.
And we'll see what you think.
Sure.
Come on. Is that not working? Did we get? I think the website may be not liking me right now. Hold on. I'm gonna reload this. How do you... Oh. There we go. Somebody asks, do you feel any thumb and index motion? I think we did talk about that.
Just a touch. Nothing too insane.
Right. And I think it's more of a string switching thing.
It is. It is.
Right. So you're here and you need to get down here, and this engages maybe to kind of do this
To
little
jump over.
gymnastic type of thing. That's what I think. Okay, here's, let's do this one. Oh, there were some questions about like shows you played. Hey Andy, it's Matt Dorato. We talked at the Garden Walk NAMM week about me just starting Bluegrass. You said there was a live vid you were going to recommend that I check out. Putting you on the spot, do you happen to remember that video?
Oh gosh, it was at NAMM. First of all, live vid for getting into Bluegrass. It was probably the, if you look up, put this in your search engine, it would be Merle Fest, All-Star Band, Tony Rice, Mark O'Connor, Jerry Douglas, Bela Fleck, Sam Bush. Put all of that in there and you'll get a performance where they're all playing together. That's like the coolest, most pyrotechnic set. Also, they're playing standards like 9-pound hammer and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you get the old and the new and the shred
Yeah.
and the standard all together.
And that was Doc Watson's, for those who don't know. Merle was Doc Watson's kid.
son, yeah, that died.
And he died, I think it was like some horrible thing, like a tractor accident.
It was
or
really,
something
really, yeah,
weird.
some kind of car, tractor, vehicle,
Thing.
awful thing.
And he, I will say, Doc Watson was one of the first people I reached out to when I first had that camera. Like,
Really?
Yeah. And the manager wrote back, and he said, Doc doesn't really know why he should do this. And because honestly, at the time, I didn't know really what I know now about Bluegrass at all, either in terms of technique or history. I just knew that this is a guy who's doing something really interesting and I want to know more about. And I really probably could have made a much better case for why someone like Doc, especially in his golden years, should sit down with the crazy kid with the metal guy. Because I think I might have mentioned Yngwie Malmsteen, which was probably not the way to get in that door. Yeah. And it's a shame now because he's no longer with us. And I have found some of that archaeology type footage of like someone at one of the, it was a Telluride Bluegrass Festival, I think.
Yeah, in Colorado.
Yes, and some cameraman had the good sense to go right here with the camera.
Wow.
And you see a movement like I had no idea. Like you would never know because Doc looks like he's doing this elbow thing.
But there's a little more guillotine in it.
There absolutely is. It's probably what Sam Bush is doing too, I would think.
Yeah.
And you could see it, and I was like, holy hell. And I feel like had I had that email to write over again, I would have been able to make a much more cogent, presentation as to why Doc is important, and we need to understand how he did.
Absolutely.
What he did, which is a shame. So that's one I regret. But
the mistakes of youth, we touched on that earlier.
We did. Yeah. Let's see. There's something in here about it says, will you help get a Magnon and Travis toy and yourself live? He's talking about the device thing. Please get the pedal steel guitar some love.
Yeah. No.
No.
No. Now, Travis is a great friend of mine, a fabulous player.
And he's pedal steel player?
He's pedal steel player and dobro player, one of my favorite musicians in the world, but also just one of my best, closest friends. And we could get him one of these magnets. He'd probably try to figure out how to slide up and down with it, and then it's just zooming in and out the whole time.
Oh, just like GoPro finger cam kind of?
Yeah, put it on the bar.
Yeah. Bar cam.
Yeah.
That's it, because that thing's, otherwise it's like 2 feet wide or something, right?
Yeah, it's a 10-string, I think.
Yeah.
And Travis is odd. Most steel players use a C6 and E9. Travis uses E9 and has now started using an A9.
You're talking about?
The neck tuning.
Oh, so it actually
it's tuned to a chord.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I didn't know that. And the pedal thing, I have.
And that's the thing about pedal steels. All those guys, there's a basic loose outline, but a lot of those guys have them customized to. So there's not like the way.
It's like all organ players, B3 players, and drawbars, and these weird settings.
Yeah, it's like that's
probably interesting. Yeah. So if we can figure out how to film it, we'll. I think people maybe should understand that I'm not. Sometimes I feel like, we've done so much Bluegrass, and I don't want to alienate people who like rock and vice versa, but I love everything, and I just want to know how it all works.
Yeah,
same. And if it's cool, I'll film it, and I'll ask, if I can get a great person, a great, incredible player to...
Travis, though, only is a finger pick guy, so a lot of your...
That's how they do it, though, right?
Yeah, a lot of your alternate picking things...
Maybe.
It's funny, he plays mandolin, and he'll still play with finger picks. It's he's only finger picks.
Yep.
He'll strum with a flat pick, but...
Yep. Oh, here's a question about edge picking. This is one of the nerd things we haven't talked about, but it's edge picking is what my term for whether you're flat against the string or whether
then you lean into it.
Yeah.
So I lean forward.
It sounds like, and now some people modulate that with the thumb.
Yeah.
Right, like the bump there. So do you when you play, the thumb is pretty more or less relaxed, straight, like that?
Yeah.
Right, so there's a little bit.
So I'm not flat. No. It's definitely got a little. And the only reason I know that is because all my picks end up having a bevel on them.
Right, and that, what do you call it? Did I do this? So the idea, though, is that if your thumb is more relaxed, then it's the angle of your wrist and arm that will determine the amount of the edge picking that you have. Yeah. And so that's causing, just to sit here and look at this, it looks like maybe 35 degrees or so of pick against the string. It's not flat, nor is it super aggressively vertical.
Correct.
It's something like this, and that seems pretty common because most people are approaching the string sort of like this. Some people will be a little bit more vertical in their approach, and others will be a little bit lower.
Yeah,
some
I'm
guys
trying
play
to
right
feel
over
that.
them.
I wasn't just ignoring you. I was trying to feel it.
No, I understand.
Yeah. It probably looked really, really bad, but I was trying to. I lost my earpiece.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's gone forever.
It's fine.
You set it over there.
So I want to start our event first.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, it started playing light up.
So,
Yeah, that's a.
and we're holding on that
Oh.
screen right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, that's this.
Got it.
I think that's the earpiece has some auto engage function for.
It came out of my ear and just started doing things.
It was like, nope, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
All right, so it's 5 now, and then we have to.
Ear union is what that was. The
what?
union said no more earpieces. Yeah, it's over. Your time limit is up.
Exactly. So let's. I say we do our Mr. Rogers trolley out music now.
I don't know
that
what
make any
that
sense?
would be. What would that be?
How does he end the episode with the trolley? I forget actually now.
I feel like it would be.
Exactly.
That's trolley out music to me.
It is. I need a blanket and a nap now, though.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think we can head out with something a little more gain.
Yeah, gang.
Thank you, YouTube, and thank you, Cracking the Code viewers. We will be back tomorrow, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And we're going to do some acoustics instruments,
Yeah.
as they say on Metalocalypse, the grandpa's instruments.
Yeah.
And they don't have batteries that die. They don't need amplifiers, and they're really difficult and challenging to play.
Yeah.
And,
we'll put this on there, and my scale will go from here to here.
That's exactly right. So thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks for watching Cracking the Code. Of course, we're going to take this stuff that we've done here, and we'll probably get it up on the platform, and we'll edit in some of these close-up clips at some point soon. But thanks so much, everybody.
Cheers.
Signing off.
All right. All right.